Okay, let's jump into this. We spent a lot of time talking about, the really big things shaping climate emissions, forests, oceans. But what is something really local, maybe even a bit, well, pungent,
Yeah.
like penguin poop, is actually fighting climate change down in Antarctica?
It sounds pretty wild, doesn't it? A bit like science fiction, maybe? But that exact connection, improbable as it seems, is what a recent study looked into. It was published in Communications, Earth, and Environment. So we've done a deep dive into this paper to really unpack how these Adélie penguins, their guano, and the atmosphere itself might be linked in a way that could be helping defend against climate change.
Right, and our mission here today is to walk you through this research because it's fascinating. Antarctica's ecosystems, they're under so much pressure, especially the sea ice, which penguins absolutely rely on. So this idea that the penguins themselves might be contributing somehow to protecting their own home, well, it adds a whole new layer.
It really does. It highlights just how interconnected everything is, even in ways you'd never initially guess.
Exactly. Okay, so let's get to the core finding. What's the big unexpected connection here?
Well, the main thing they found is that ammonia released from the penguin guano, their droppings basically seems to seriously boost cloud formation over the area, and those clouds, they could potentially be offering a protective shield, helping to cool Antarctica.
Okay, hold on. Boosting cloud formation. That feels like a big leap from, well, penguin poop. How does ammonia actually do that? What's the chemistry going on up there?
Right, it's like a cascade effect.
Yeah.
It starts with the ammonia getting into the air. Seabirds, and especially these huge penguin colonies, are known to be major ammonia sources in polar regions. That part isn't entirely new, but once it's in the air, it reacts. It mixes with other gases, especially these sulfur-containing ones that are naturally around.
And that reaction creates something new. Particles.
Exactly. Tiny airborne particles. We call them aerosols, not like spray can aerosols. These are microscopic natural particles. And the crucial bit is that these specific particles, formed from the ammonia reactions, are like perfect surfaces for water vapor.
Ah, okay. So water vapor floating around needs something to grab onto to become a droplet.
Precisely. Yeah, they act as seeds, what scientists call condensation nuclei.
Got it.
Without enough of these nuclei, it's harder for clouds to form. But if you pump lots of these ammonia-derived aerosols into the air,
You make it much easier for clouds to get going.
you got it. Cloud formation gets enhanced, sometimes significantly.
Okay, so ammonia from guano makes particles, particles make clouds. Why do these clouds matter for climate change there? What's the effect?
Well, clouds are complex. They can warm and cool. But in this kind of situation, more cloud cover or denser clouds can act like a bit of a shield. They reflect sunlight back out to space, which cools the surface. They also interact with heat radiating up. The overall effect, the researchers suggest, could help regulate temperatures locally. And importantly, this might help maintain the extent of sea ice, which is, critical for the penguins themselves.
Wow, okay. So it's a feedback loop almost. Their waste potentially helps preserve the ice they need. That's incredible. How did the scientists actually measure this? Where did they set up?
They did their field work near Marambio Base, that's on the Antarctic Peninsula. They had some pretty sophisticated atmospheric monitoring gear set up there, and they collected data for a stretch in early 2023, January 10th to March 20th.
And I assume they weren't just anywhere. They picked their spot carefully.
Oh, absolutely. Their site was deliberately placed about 8 kilometers, so roughly 5 miles, downwind from a massive Adélie penguin colony. We're talking something like 60,000 birds there.
60,000, okay, that's a lot of potential ammonia source.
Exactly. So they were basically positioned to catch the air blowing from the colony.
So the key moment when the wind shifted, blowing from the colony towards their instruments,
Yeah.
what happened? What did the data show?
It was pretty dramatic, actually. When that wind shift happened, the ammonia concentration they measured just skyrocketed.
Skyrocketed. How much are we talking? Give us the number.
Okay, so get this. The baseline, when the wind wasn't coming from the colony, was really low, less than 10.5 parts per trillion. Tiny amounts.
Right, trillion, okay.
But when the wind came from the penguin direction, it jumped up to peaks of 13.5 parts per billion.
Whoa, hold on. Trillion to billion, that's a huge jump.
It's more than 1,000 times higher. 1,000.
Wow.
It really underlines how intense these colonies are as a localized ammonia source. It's not just a tiny trace. It's a major input into the local atmosphere.
And did that effect last? Or was it just when the birds were most active?
That's another fascinating part. Even after the penguins started migrating away, Towards the end of February, the ammonia levels stayed high, just from the guano left behind. The concentration was still over 100 times higher than that baseline level.
Incredible. So the poop keeps giving, atmospherically speaking, even after the birds leave. Okay, they nailed the ammonia surge. But how did they connect that specifically to the aerosols and then the clouds? What was the evidence for that link?
Yeah, they needed to connect those dots. So they weren't just measuring ammonia, they were looking at other things in the air at the same time. And they saw that whenever the wind came from the colony, bringing that ammonia plume, there was also a sharp increase in the aerosol particles, both the number of particles and their size.
Ah, okay. So more ammonia directly correlated with more of those cloud-seeding particles.
Exactly. The data lined up perfectly. And maybe the most direct piece of evidence they mentioned was actually observing fog.
Fog.
Yeah, about 3 hours after one of these wind shifts brought air from the colony, dense fog rolled into their measurement site. And the authors basically said, look, this fog is very likely the direct result of that sudden spike in aerosol particles fueled by the penguin ammonia.
Seeing the fog literally roll in. That's pretty compelling evidence for the whole chain reaction. Ammonia, particles, condensation, fog. Wow.
It really ties it together visually, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So putting all these pieces together, the ammonia measurements, the particles, the fog, what's the big picture conclusion from this study?
Well, synthesizing it all, the study concludes that this biological process, just penguins doing their thing, releasing ammonia from their waste, it might actually be playing a noticeable role locally in sort of buffering Antarctica against climate change effects. It's like the penguins are inadvertently helping to protect their own home.
A kind of natural built-in defense mechanism for that specific ecosystem. That's really something.
It really is. And the researchers themselves emphasize this point. They say this work highlights just how important it is to protect these seabirds and their habitats. It's not just about the birds themselves, which is obviously crucial, but their biological functions might be providing these underappreciated climate services, especially in polar regions facing such rapid change.
It's just amazing, isn't it? How something so seemingly biological, like animal waste, connects to complex atmospheric chemistry with potential climate implications for a whole region.
Absolutely. And it really encourages you, the listener, to think about these deep connections in ecosystems, right? Things we might totally overlook. How a very local source, like one penguin colony, can potentially influence the atmosphere in ways that actually matter on a bigger scale.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. Thinking about this study, what other unexpected natural processes might be out there, things that seem small or unrelated, but are actually playing these crucial hidden roles in shaping climate or protecting vulnerable places?
That's a great question to ponder. There could be countless interactions like this that we just haven't uncovered yet.
Definitely food for thought. A fascinating look at the surprising power of penguin poop.